Thanks so much. Like she just said, my name is Danielle Alvarez. I'm with the California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and I'm joined by my colleague Becca Tucker today. We are super excited to talk to you guys about the Protecting Blue Whales and Blue Skies program and the work that we are doing to reduce vessel strike risk to whales. So here's a little overview of what the presentation is going to go over, a little bit of background on why we're here, vessel strikes as a global issue. We'll talk about the different measures for reducing vessel strike risk, and then we'll go into some of the work that we are doing to mitigate vessel strikes as well as underwater radiated noise in California. And then we will finish off with some opportunities and resource to help the kind of work that we do. So, why we're here today to talk about protecting whales off the coast of California and beyond, focusing on ship strikes. So, who are we concerned about when it comes to ship strikes? The great whales, which are the large whales in the ocean, including all of the baleen whales plus sperm whales. These species play an important role in their ocean ecosystems through both top-down and bottom-up forcing of marine food webs, cycling nutrients through vertically in the water column and across space as they migrate great distances, and providing detrital energy and habitat for deep sea species through whale falls. From the human perspective, certain species carry high religious, spiritual, and subsistence importance to certain indigenous groups, and more broadly, they are culturally and economically important to people around the world. All of this to say, these animals play an outsized role in marine ecosystems as well as human cultures. So to remind folks of where we're coming from with respect to whale conservation and why so many whales are endangered, great whale populations were absolutely decimated during the commercial whaling era, with millions of whales harvested from the ocean, reducing populations as much as 99% in some regions. They were hunted primarily for their blubber, which was rendered into oil and used for a variety of purposes. Right whales, bowheads, and sperm whales were targeted in particular for their whale oil. Petroleum-based products eventually replaced what we used to use whale oil for. Baleen was also widely used as a structural material, like for the boning in corsets or the ribs of an umbrella. It was both flexible and strong, so it had many uses. Plastics and fiberglass are used today for what baleen was used for in the past. Following the International Whaling Moratorium in 1985, many whale populations are recovering now, but they still exist at very low numbers relative to their historic abundances, with some species still remaining on the brink of extinction. This graph on the right shows how blue whale population numbers were affected in relation to the history of commercial whaling. And while their numbers are steadily increasing, we can see just how drastically low those numbers still are compared to the pre-whaling era. All whales, regardless of the ocean they were found in, were affected by industrial whaling. Across all the species found in the North Pacific, whaling decreased populations anywhere to only 5 to 16% of their historic levels. And as previously mentioned, in other areas, populations were left with only 1% remaining. So while commercial whaling is now a much more limited threat, there are a number of new threats to these incredibly important species. And one of the key ones comes from marine shipping industry. So the issue of vessel strikes is a global concern for whale populations and whale conservation. In present day, ship strikes from large vessels, entanglement in fishing gear, and underwater noise, also from large vessels, are the biggest anthropogenic threats to whales across the world. Habitat and food web changes due to climate change, habitat degradation, and pollution also negatively impact the health of whales at both the individual and the population level. So large whales species are highly migratory, so conservation efforts oftentimes require international coordination to fully protect a species' entire habitat range. This map from World Wildlife Fund highlights global migration corridors for a handful of species, and we can see just how far some species travel between their foraging habitats and their reproductive and calving grounds. These migrations happen every year, but with climate change, the seasonality of these movements is beginning to shift. To compare, here we see the major shipping corridors that ocean-going vessels use to ship goods from country to country. Unfortunately, there's a lot of overlap in whale habitat with the highly trafficked areas seen in yellow, which puts large whales at high risks for ship strikes in a lot of their ranges. So collisions with shipping vessels are currently the leading source of mortality for many whale populations, threatening some with extinction. For example, the endangered populations of blue, fin, and humpback whales on the US West Coast, ship strikes are at unsustainable levels. On the US East Coast, ship strikes are a critical threat to the endangered North Atlantic right whale, which currently have less than 350 animals remaining in their population. There are many populations we don't know much about, and because of that, whale ship collisions can be difficult to study. Struck whales often sink out of view from researchers, and the captains and crew members on these ocean-going vessels often don't even notice a collision occurred. But we know that ship strikes are a global problem. Beyond well-studied populations, ship strikes are reported in all oceans and across the world. Whales are washed up with injuries associated with collisions with ships. This graphic on the right shows data from International Whaling Commission's ship strike database. This data spans from 1820 to 2019. And since it is a common source of direct mortality to these species, all of whom are still recovering from the industrial whaling era, ship strikes are a top concern for whale conservation efforts. At the same time, we are pretty dependent on a global economy. Maritime shipping is the cheapest option for most traded goods, and it moves a huge volume of goods compared to the other transportation types. These two graphs are from studies that separately looked into the future of maritime trade, and it is projected that marine shipping traffic could increase up to 12-fold come 2050. So unless we take action to mitigate this threat, whale ship collisions will only continue to increase. So we have a couple options as conservation managers to approach measures for reducing vessel strike risk to whales. First, we can address the problem implementing spatial measures or designations. This aims to move vessel traffic away from certain habitats or concentrate it in areas to reduce the footprint of at-risk habitat, so essentially spatially separating the two. This can include routing measures like traffic separation schemes implemented by the IMO or voluntary routing measures implemented by more local entities. There are also areas to be avoided, which ask vessels to completely remain outside of designated zones. Port access route studies help identify traffic patterns that inform any routing measures, and particularly sensitive sea area and important marine mammal area designations are super important for informing management measures to ensure critical whale habitats are being protected. The other management option is to implement vessel speed reduction measures, and this is particularly helpful where vessels and whale habitat cannot be spatially separated. These can be mandatory or voluntary measures, and we have found that the incentive-based approach leads to substantially increased cooperation with slowdown requests. A slower moving vessel allows a whale more time to move away from the path of danger, but if a strike does occur, it can be less lethal than a ship strike that happens at a faster speed. So ship strike management occurs across the globe, but the majority of risk hotspots are still unprotected. Less than 7% of risk hotspots have some sort of ship strike management system in place, but the majority of those management measures are voluntary. So let's zoom into California a little bit and the work that we do to address ship strikes and whale conservation. So on the left, we have model population densities for blue, fin, and humpback whales in that order. They are the threatened and endangered species that we focus on. The darker blue indicates higher predicted densities. On the right, we can see vessel track densities from 2024 through June 2025, showing the travel paths of hundreds of thousands of large ocean-going vessels that travel to California ports. Approximately 40% of all imports to the US come through California ports. So there is a lot of overlap between these vessels and whale habitat. The Santa Barbara Channel in particular is a hotspot for both whales and shipping traffic. Here is a map of all recorded ship strikes on the West Coast that have been observed from 2015 to 2024. They tend to concentrate near our major ports, but that does not necessarily mean that's where the ship strikes are happening. As you can see in this image on the bottom right, very unfortunately, oftentimes a whale could move with a ship if it is struck. These numbers on the right show the mortality. It is considered a minimum value, and modeling work estimates only what we can see. Therefore, I'm so sorry. We only see about 10% of the actual ship strikes that happen, so we have to rely on modeled estimates. Oftentimes, a struck whale will sink or be carried offshore by currents. So we need to model the ones that we can record. So thanks in part to the data shown in the previous two slides, in California, we have a variety of spatial management measures in place to address the issue of ship strikes. Also, thanks to the hard work of NOAA, the U.S. Coast Guard, and U.S. IMO members, we have an IMO designated traffic separation scheme for vessels entering and exiting the San Francisco Bay Area ports, which was amended in 2013. We also have a traffic separation scheme in the Santa Barbara Channel and an area to be avoided encompassing a large area around the Channel Islands, which was most recently amended to become a larger ATBA and a longer TSS in 2023. So due to the high volume of shipping traffic, we also pair a slowdown measure on top of the spatial measures from the previous slide. Here we have the 2025 voluntary vessel speed reduction request in California, which asks vessels 300 gross tons or larger to reduce their speeds to 10 knots or less in the designated zones. Based on the historical whale presence data, the VSR request is in effect for May through the end of the calendar year, though we did end up extending the request to January 15th based on a variety of surveys that confirmed a number of whales still remained in the area after the original cutoff time. So that's one of the great things about a voluntary measure. It allows flexibility where an established regulation may not. So the voluntary VSR request was first established in 2008, but awareness and therefore cooperation was extremely low. After a pilot season in 2014, the Protecting Blue Whales and Blue Skies program incorporated incentives and dedicated outreach about the voluntary VSR request, which resulted in a steady increase in cooperation to the record high numbers that we saw last year in this graph. And with that, I will turn it over to Becca to talk about the Blue Whales Blue Skies program.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Danielle. So yes, as Danielle teed up, Protecting Blue Whales Blue Skies was established in 2014 in response to that low cooperation with NOAA's voluntary request that had been in place since 2007. And what happened was a bunch of sanctuary folks, environmental groups, and actually air districts came together and said, how could we potentially increase voluntary effort by industry in the absence of a mandatory regulation? And as I'll talk about a little bit further, an unfortunate but happy coincidence exists in where peak whale migratory season for blue, fin, and humpback whales also coincides with when California coastal air districts are most impacted by smog. And so most people don't know that in Santa Barbara County, where I am, and Ventura County, smog emissions from ocean-going vessels can be up to 50% of our air pollution. And Ventura County is out of compliance in many months with ambient air quality standards. So the Blue Whales Blue Skies formation offers air districts a really innovative way in which they can reduce emissions, even though they technically don't have any jurisdiction over ocean-going vessels. So with that, I'll just kind of give you the high level of how Blue Whales Blue Skies works. The model that we've been kind of tweaking and adapting over time to incentivize voluntary cooperation is to first encourage participation. Danielle here does an amazing job reaching out to shipping lines with transits in the area saying, hey, join our mailing list. We have this program. Here's how it works, and here's the benefit. So we do a lot of outreach and encouragement and participation in the program. We then will verify. So we'll say, if you slow down, we will make sure all your effort is quantified. We will provide you monthly reporting, which I'll explain a little bit in a minute. And then we will quantify across the program all the environmental benefits, and we will celebrate the top performing shipping lines. Next slide. So this provides a little screenshot of the monthly reporting. So the program is free for shipping lines to enroll. And again, mostly Danielle here will be working with our partner, Benioff Ocean Science Laboratory. And we provide these customized reports that has, you can see in this bottom right here with that big red box, that is every single vessel that had distance traveled in the VSR that zone that month. And they can literally look at each vessel, and the operations managers folks might reach out to a captain and say, hey, we're trying to cooperate with this VSR measure. How can we help you up that rate? So it's really meant to be something that helps kind of the participants improve over time if they want to, as well as highlighted above there. We also include information on whale sightings, which is a kind of a nice motivator. That data is from both hydrophones picking up whale calls, as well as citizen science and people logging whale sightings when they're out on whale watch or other surveys. Next slide. Oh, and I should highlight, many people ask that the reason that we can see those cooperation rates and understand how each vessel is performing is all these large ships, they have AIS data, which basically pings their location and speed. We get all that data, and then we spend a lot of time quantifying it and can look at each little segment and figure out which percent of total distance traveled is that whale safer 10 knots or less. So in terms of how else we incentivize industry besides verifying their effort, is we provide awareness and transparency on responsible shipping practices, and we recognize industry. So this here was, Danielle and I were actually at the Port of Oakland last month on Earth Day. Every year we have an award ceremony. And as part of the program materials, each season we'll have different award tiers. So those folks you see up there on the stage, they're holding a custom whale tail award trophy. I'll show a little bit more detail later, but that means that across their entire fleet, 90% or more of all distance traveled was at that whale safer 10 knots. And that image on the right is just to highlight that we spend a lot of time talking about vessel speed reduction, talking about the benefits, celebrating industry, and trying to get this issue out further. I think there's a growing awareness about companies paying more and more attention to biodiversity impacts, but obviously there's a whole host of environmental challenges out here, and this one's lesser known. So we do try and spend a lot of time to make sure people both know that vessel strikes is an issue, but also understand that there are near-term operational opportunities to make a really huge difference in whale conservation. Next slide. And this here is to show how we work in communities. That's Danielle and I at Sustainable Brands. I'll explain a little bit more about our ambassador program and opportunities for especially consumer goods companies to get involved. We do letter writing. So if you ever are working with kids group or want to think about a way to support and amplify vessel speed reduction opportunities, we'll provide, excuse me, I'm going to take a sip of water. Um, Postcards. A thank you goes a long way. One of the founders tells a story about how a group of kids wrote postcards to one of the CEOs of the shipping lines that was participating in the program to say thank you. And that made a huge impact. And that CEO was saying, you know, we're committed to this program. We want to keep doing, and we really love this. So we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that the captains and your crew that are out on the water working hard to cooperate know that their efforts are really appreciated and it's valued both by their customers and the broader public. Next slide. Okay, so the ambassador program. I mentioned we do verification, communication, and positive PR. And then the ambassador program is a newer effort. It was launched just a couple years ago in 2022 to really also kind of be that third leg where we're driving demand. And the point of it is to um, let the shipping lines know that there is a really big business case, that companies that are actually booking and moving their cargo on these ships appreciate their efforts. And then these companies can go back to their customers and say, we're working with top performing shipping lines that are slowing down, and you can feel good about this, and this could be part of their larger corporate responsibility efforts. So to be eligible for an ambassador, you either have to ship with or work with at least one participating shipping line, and then we'll work with you to figure out how they can help us amplify the program. Obviously, we're a small team. Some of these brands have thousands and thousands of followers. So if they share about the program, it does a huge amount of work for us to make sure more people know about it, and add pressure so that more and more companies will consider prioritizing whale safer shipping. Excuse me. Next slide. Okay, so this is our latest 2025 season results. So what we do is we work and we send those monthly reports. Those are just confidential between us and the shipping lines. And then at the mid-season mark, which is end of August, and at the end of the season, we will look through all the data and verify the exact percent of distance traveled at whale safer speed across the entire fleet. And then we will provide recognition and actually name the companies at that point. And so we really focus on positive recognition. And if a shipping line signs on and is doesn't meet our minimum participation criteria of 30% or more, there's no penalties, but we don't celebrate them or talk about them until we verified a minimum participation level. And so this season cooperation chart there, on the top, that's Sapphire. Last year, that meant that all those shipping lines, there was 22, 90% or more of total distance traveled was at whale safer speed. Our next level was gold, that's 70% or more, and then blue sky at 50%. And I love this chart on the left. If you look at that light blue, that just shows that since 2017, when the program was really getting started, how much distance traveled at whale safer speed has increased over time. And across all our participants, that comes out to about an 85% cooperation rate, which is pretty exciting. So last year we had 787 vessels participate, and across all of those vessels, that came out to 481,000 nautical miles at whale safer speed, which, fun fact, that is more distance that it takes to travel to the moon and back. Next slide. Um, The other big part of what we do is we work with research partners each year to quantify the specific environmental benefits of that season. So for ship strike work, we worked with Dr. Anna Nisi at University of Washington, and she looked at the actual speeds of vessels in our program when it was active versus what were the baseline average speeds in 2016 before the program was in effect. And with modeling, determined that we reduced ship strike risk by 40%. And then we also look at underwater noise pollution. So, as I'm sure you folks are well aware, sound is extremely important to whales. It also travels 4 times faster underwater, and it's critical for their ability to communicate, navigate, and hunt. And so in the 2025 season, we worked with Scripps Institution of Oceanography and Dr. Vanessa Zobel. They're actually taking measurements of the ships when they're traveling at the whale safer speed and comparing that to baseline speeds out of season when the VSR is not in effect. And they determined in 2025, we reduced underwater radiated noise by 5.2 decibels, which equates to 45% reduction in sound pressure, which is, I think, the more biologically significant indicator for whales, or 70% reduction in acoustic intensity. Next slide. And then, Danielle, I'll take a sip of water. Will you also quickly play that cleaner air and safer whales video, and then I can dive into these results?
Yeah.
We are right here along the Santa Barbara Channel where there are thousands of ships pass every year, and we have a very difficult ozone problem. The ships are 40 or 50% of the ozone forming pollution in our airshed. So if we can't get a handle on that, that there's no way we can actually achieve the health-based standards that we need to do. We don't have any regulatory authority over those ships. We have an opportunity with Blue Whales, Blue Skies to get the ships to voluntarily slow down and reduce their emissions, which helps improve air quality onshore. It just happened to be a happy coincidence that ozone season here on shore is the same period of time when the endangered whales are in the channel. So we need the emission reductions the most between April and November, and that's when the whales are here in the highest concentration.
Awesome. Okay, so as Tyler there explained, and as emphasized by this chart right now, across the state of California, this is data from CARB, those little pie charts. Ocean-going vessels contribute about 21% of statewide mobile source NOx emissions, which is the precursor to smog. And in 2037, that's expected to grow. And so when ships slow down to whale safer 10 knots or less from baseline speeds, we find on average it reduces emissions by about 27% because they're using less fuel. And so last year, for example, across the 2025 season, that was 1,491 tons of NOx, and that's equivalent to taking about 900,000 cars off the road. It also reduces SOx, DPM, and regional greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide. And then finally, as I mentioned previously, these are the Whale Tail Awards. These are kind of a huge part of our program. Getting that Whale Tail Award really means something. These go up in, the corporate offices of the shipping lines. If you follow us on LinkedIn or Instagram, shipping lines will post about these. These were handcrafted actually by a shipwright out of recycled ship wood. And then we in general spend a lot of time talking about all these things and different elements of our program in as many ways as we can, and trying to amplify the opportunities and celebrate these industry leaders. So we work on earned media, press releases, social media, and we are at events. So please do let us know if you think there's an opportunity for us to spread the word. We would really appreciate the feedback, and are always looking to grow the awareness about these opportunities. Next slide. Okay, so what's next or now? Right now, we are in the 2026 VSR season. This is really exciting. That if you look here on the big map, those blue diagonal lines right along the coast, that was where our 2025 zone. And now that green is the existing 2026 vessel speed reduction zone. And thanks to Assembly Member Greg Hart, California passed AB 14 last year, which made the Blue Whales, Blue Skies a statewide program with the Ocean Protection Council as a stakeholder. So that is really exciting. We didn't have San Diego in that zone at all last year, and now our zone is stretching all the way from the Mexico to the Oregon border. So it is a really exciting change for the 2026 season. And then on the left there, we included these maps just to show, why did we expand? Up top, that shows the biologically important areas for fin, blue, and humpback whales. Previously, Danielle had showed those in like the darker blue. So you can really see how that zone is kind of hugging the area where especially the blue and humpbacks are. And then the bottom line is you can kind of see it's a little bit hard vessel traffic. And that's just drive home just how much vessels are moving through this area and why we are looking to make sure as many of those vessels as possible are incentivized to voluntarily slow down for whale conservation. Next slide. The other big change for 2026 is we have more county air districts joining our effort. So San Diego County and Sonoma County are also partners now in the program, and that map just shows you all the different air districts that are critical partners in this program and are part of all this effort to make sure that vessels are slowing down as one of the critical ways in which they can protect public health in their communities. Next slide. And finally, the other big update for 2026 is previously cruise lines were not eligible to enroll. Up until this year, it was open to bulk, tanker, container, and car. They call them ro-ros, roll on, roll off. And this year, we're super excited that we've welcomed cruise lines. That cruise lines have different engines because of all the passengers and all the extra electricity and fuel demands that you need to keep all those people fed and air conditioned on the ship. So it required some extra analysis in terms of if we could anticipate both the whale conservation and the air quality benefit. And once our partners confirmed that, we were super excited to open the program to cruise lines. So that's something Danielle and I have been working on the outreach, and we're excited to see some interest in the cruise lines. And hopefully at the mid-season mark, we'll be able to talk about those cruise lines and celebrate the ones that have slowed down. And we think it's an exciting opportunity also to hopefully leverage the platform of these cruise lines and all the guests on board to understand about one of the critical issues facing whales and how large vessels can be part of a solution. Next slide. Okay, next we're going to talk a little bit of opportunities and resources. I'm going to hand it back over to Danielle, who's going to show you about the Whale Atlas, which I'll give her a shout out, is an amazing map that I love that Danielle really led and launched this year, which is super exciting. And I'm also going to go and get some water. I'll be right back.
Thanks, Becca. Yeah, Whale Atlas was a really awesome resource that we launched last summer. It's a GIS interactive page that focuses on management areas specifically for interactions between whales and ocean-going vessels. So, like I previously mentioned, vessel speed reduction zones, areas to be avoided, traffic separation schemes that were created with the intent of whale conservation. And so this was inspired by the World Shipping Council's whale chart, which is a document compiling a lot of these zones globally, which was incredible work. So absolutely shout out to them for kind of initiating this effort. But it was a static document. And so us at California Marine Sanctuary Foundation, working very intimately with VSRs, ATBAs, TSSs. We saw the value of making it publicly accessible in a geospatial format. So that document, I went and digitized it. We also were aware of some additional zones that weren't included in the original whale chart document, so we added those as well. And so all of those zones are in the Whale Atlas. Let me go ahead and do a little demo. So this is what it looks like. And when you click on a particular zone, it will auto-populate with the relevant information, what the measure is, when the measure is in effect, the species that it's focused on, and then the specifics of the measure. So for us in California, we ask vessels 300 gross tons or larger to slow to 10 knots or less. But let's toggle over here to Puget Sound. Here we have the Quiet Sound program, and so this one is targeting southern resident right whales, killer whales. Sorry, I talk about right whales all the time, but southern resident killer whales. And as you can see in the specifics here, depending on what type of ship you are, they're asking for different speeds. So if you are a vehicle carrier, a cruise ship, or a container ship, they're asking you to reduce speeds to 10 to 14.5 knots or less. And if you are a cargo carrier, bulk carrier, or government vessel, they're asking for 11 knots. And while we do 10 knots, they do a different one because they have a lot of different factors with the environment of the water, the currents, and so it can be variable. There are zones all over the world. We have Alaska here. There are some in Panama and Costa Rica. If we go over to the Mediterranean Sea, we've got some off the coast of France, Italy, Greece. So this is a live resource, and we hope to continue to keep updating it as new zones are established. We have a really great network of other conservation managers from nonprofits, governments, and so we have been informed about a few new zones, which is pretty awesome. And we are able to get these into Whale Atlas to help spread awareness about it. So that's available on the Blue Whales, Blue Skies resources page website. Another really awesome database GIS viewer, also on the Blue Whales Blue Skies website, is our Whale Alert database viewer. We have a couple different data inputs. So we show the data from the Whale Alert app, where citizen scientists can submit whale sightings. We also do an aerial survey with trained observers. They go up in a small plane about once a month, and they fly over the shipping channel to document any whales. And then we also have our industry sightings tab, which is specifically for our Blue Whales, Blue Skies participating shipping vessels. And so those captains and crew members who are a part of Blue Whales, Blue Skies, opportunistically, if they see whales on their transits, they are encouraged to share those with us, where, when the whales that they're able to see, if it can be identified, they are on the water way more than any researcher can be. And so it's a really awesome thing to see all the different whales from all the different places that we would probably not be able to get to. So when we have a particularly enthusiastic captain, like Captain Damley down there in the bottom, we, again, for sort of communication purposes, we want to celebrate him. And so we did this awesome, inspiring story about his background. He is a very cool guy and sends us incredible photos from this point all around the world. I think right now we're getting stuff from him from Japan. So it's a really cool source of data that, like I said, they are on the water everywhere, way more than us researchers or conservation managers can be. And then I'll hand it back over to Becca for Whale
Awesome.
Safe.
And this is not something that's hosted on the Blue Whales Blue Skies website, but Whale Safe, if you're not already familiar, is an amazing resource. Benioff Ocean Science Laboratory is one of the partners of the Blue Whales Blue Skies program, and they have this Whale Safe website where you can see, and that data is actually what feeds into the monthly reports that I showed early. So up there, you can see they have this whale presence rating of very high. It's supposed to be a resource that really reinforces to shipping lines that, hey, please do slow down and look out because there's a lot of whales in the channel that day. They have different regions, and a really exciting update is you may have seen in the news, was it last week or maybe the week before, they launched a new San Francisco Bay whale presence rating, and they actually are working with whale detection. I think it's Whale Spotter, and they have two different cameras. And so that little screenshot there, those are actual detections of whales by that camera. And I believe they're planning to install more over time. This was in large part response to the significant problem where, especially now with climate change, more and more gray whales are coming into the bay to feed. And there's been a drastic uptick in vessel strikes of gray whales. So that's an exciting new update. Check out the news on that. And then if you check out Whale Safe North America, you can zoom into the different zones and see day to day, week to week, how whale presence rating is changing. Next slide. Then if you're interested, just flagging for more resources, we worked with a wildlife photographer, Adam Ernster. He created a documentary, it's about 20 minutes long, talking about the history of blue whales in specific to the Santa Barbara Channel and different efforts. It talks about blue whales, blue skies, as well as other resources in that. And we also have that translated into Spanish and Portuguese, and those are freely available on our YouTube channel. Next slide. And then finally, if you're interested in getting involved and supporting, please follow us on Instagram. If you know someone that works at a company that likely imports or exports anything via ocean freight, which is most of them, because as Danielle mentioned, we have an extremely interconnected global supply chain, please let them know about the opportunity to join as an ambassador. We were just at the awards ceremony we mentioned last month, and the shipping lines really do pay attention to the ambassador program. It's an amazing way that they can go back to the other folks at their companies and saying, hey, VSR is not only good for whales and air quality, but our customers are paying attention. They're signing on as ambassadors, and it's something that they're excited to work with us about because then they can tell their customers that they're shipping whales safer. So we have these materials. We have an ambassador page on our website where we showcase all the different ambassadors. If you have a favorite company, please do ping them, email me at any time and say, hey, here's a suggestion. I really appreciate it. We're a small team and we're always kind of reaching out of who knows who at a different company to try and get them to join. And then, of course, we have our newsletter. We send out quarterly updates about the program and the impact and different events that we'll be at if you want to learn more. And then final slide. So just key takeaways. As Danielle explained, we really want people to understand that vessel strikes are one of the leading causes of mortality for whales. And there's huge opportunity remaining to protect more of these high-risk hotspots. So as we noted, vessel speed reduction is a meaningful reduction in that risk. When ships slow from 15 knots to 10 knots, that is equivalent to about a 50% reduction in strike risk. And then just the power of voluntary speed reduction measures. We're seeing really high cooperation rates and are really proud about the level of collaboration and just how committed and engaged the shipping industry is on that. I think, it's can be challenging to feel like you're making progress, and this is really a bright spot in terms of providing a model where we can incentivize action in the absence of mandatory regulations. And then just to drive home, I think more and more companies and people are paying attention to the issue of biodiversity protection, and this is one meaningful way that we can protect the marine environment. And then, of course, there's a role for everyone to play. Letting companies that you see on our ambassador program know that you appreciate that they're part of the program, or flagging this opportunity for ones that aren't, does really make a difference. Sometimes it might take, 20 different touches with the company before they'll respond to an email, and that's okay. They all have lots going on. There's lots of issues. And the more and more they know that people are paying attention, it really helps. So I think that is it. And we can open it up to any questions if folks have any.